One day, you say something with complete confidence. Everyone around you goes quiet. Not because you're right, because they know you're wrong. And somehow, you're the least aware person in the room. You argue harder, you explain more, you become even more certain. Then, someone finally gives up trying to convince you, and you walk away thinking, they just couldn't handle the truth. But what if the most dangerous thing about being wrong is not knowing that you're wrong? And what if the person this story is really about is you? There's a strange psychological pattern hiding in everyday life. You can see it at work, in relationships, in arguments, in comment sections, in that friend who always has an answer. And sometimes you can see it in the mirror. By the end of this, you may recognize something uncomfortable about the way you think. Not because you're unintelligent, but because the human brain has a terrifying ability to make us feel smarter precisely when we should be questioning ourselves. And the first sign usually appears in a moment so ordinary, you probably don't even remember it. 1. The argument you couldn't let go. Imagine you're arguing with someone. Maybe it's your partner, maybe a coworker, maybe a stranger online. They make one small mistake. You notice it immediately. You point it out. They defend themselves. So you bring up another point, then another. Soon, the original subject doesn't even matter anymore. You just need to win. You've probably felt this, that strange pressure in your chest when someone challenges an opinion you've already committed to. You're no longer listening, you're preparing the next sentence, preparing the comeback, preparing the moment when they finally realize you were right. Here's where psychology gets uncomfortable. Your brain isn't always trying to discover the truth. Sometimes it's trying to protect the version of yourself that already exists. This is closely related to confirmation bias. We naturally notice information that supports what we already believe and become more skeptical of information that threatens it. And there's something even stranger. Research on the Dunning-Kruger effect found that people with low competence in a particular area can sometimes struggle to recognize their own mistakes precisely because they lack the knowledge needed to recognize them. Think about that. The same skill you need to perform well may also be the skill you need to realize you're performing badly. That's why confidence can become dangerous, not because confidence is bad, but because confidence feels almost identical to certainty. And once your identity gets attached to being right, admitting you're wrong doesn't feel like correcting information, it feels like losing. But that's only the beginning, because there's another reason some people become completely convinced of their own intelligence, and this one happens much faster than you think. 2. You confuse knowing something with understanding it. Picture someone at dinner. The conversation turns to money. They immediately start talking. They know the terminology. They mention interest rates, markets, inflation, investments. They sound impressive. Everyone listens. And somewhere in the room, someone actually understands the subject deeply, but says almost nothing. You've probably met both people. Maybe you've even been both, because there's a seductive feeling that comes from knowing facts. You hear yourself explaining something smoothly, and your brain quietly translates that fluency into intelligence. But knowing the words isn't the same as understanding the system. Psychologists sometimes call this the illusion of explanatory depth. We often believe we understand something until we're asked to explain exactly how it works. Try it. How does a toilet actually work? How does your phone connect to the internet? Why does an airplane stay in the air? How does a zipper work? You may understand the general idea, but ask yourself to explain the entire mechanism step by step. Suddenly, there are holes, huge ones, and those holes are revealing because intelligence isn't just knowing answers. Sometimes intelligence is knowing where your answer stops. The person who says, "I don't know," may understand more than the person who gives you a 10-minute explanation. And that's where things get uncomfortable, because the smartest looking person in the room isn't always the person with the most knowledge. Sometimes it's the person most comfortable performing knowledge. And if you've ever talked confidently about something you barely understood, you know exactly what that feels like. But there's an even deeper trap, because sometimes people don't actually want to understand. They want to feel intelligent, and those are two very different things. 3. You protect your ego before you protect the truth. Imagine someone corrects you. They don't insult you, they don't mock you, they simply say, "I don't think that's accurate." And suddenly, you feel irritated. Why? They didn't attack you, they attacked an idea, but your brain may experience the correction as something much more personal. This is where ego protection enters the story. Humans have a powerful need to maintain a coherent image of themselves. If you've spent years thinking, "I'm the smart one," then being wrong creates a painful contradiction. "I am intelligent" versus "I just made a stupid mistake." Those two ideas don't sit comfortably together, so the brain looks for another explanation. Maybe the other person is jealous, maybe they're insecure, maybe they misunderstood, maybe they're stupid, maybe they're attacking you. Anything except maybe I was wrong. You've probably done this without realizing it. You make a mistake at work. Instead of thinking about your mistake, you start thinking about your manager's tone. Someone criticizes your idea. Instead of examining the idea, you start examining their personality. Your friend disagrees with you. Instead of asking why, you start wondering why they're being difficult. The conversation moves away from truth and toward identity. And once your identity enters the room, logic becomes surprisingly easy to manipulate. This is why arguments can feel so strange. Two people aren't always fighting over facts. Sometimes they're fighting over who they believe they are. And once you understand that, you start noticing something even darker. Some people don't become defensive because they're certain they're right. They become certain because being wrong would hurt too much. But there's another psychological trick waiting underneath that, one that makes people mistake attention for intelligence. 4. You think people agreeing with you means you're right. Imagine you tell a story. Everyone laughs. You make a strong point. People nod. You post an opinion online. Hundreds of people agree. For a moment, you feel something. Not just approval, validation. Your brain starts connecting the dots. They agree with me, so I must be right. But popularity and truth have never been the same thing. Human beings are deeply influenced by social proof. When we see other people behaving a certain way, our brains use that behavior as information. If everyone is looking at something, we assume there must be something worth seeing. If everyone believes something, we become more likely to believe it too. And this can create a dangerous feedback loop. You say something confidently. People agree. Their agreement increases your confidence. Your increased confidence makes you speak more strongly. People respond to your confidence. And now, confidence looks like evidence. This happens everywhere. At work, in friendships, online, even inside families. The loudest person can slowly become the unofficial authority, not because they're the most knowledgeable, because everyone gets tired of challenging them. And here's the terrifying part. Silence can look like agreement. Someone stops arguing with you. You think, I proved my point. Maybe. Or maybe they just decided you're impossible to talk to. You've probably experienced this from both sides. Sometimes you walk away from an argument feeling victorious, only to realize later that the other person wasn't convinced. They were exhausted. And that distinction matters, because the more people surround you who never challenge you, the easier it becomes to confuse comfort with correctness. But there's still one final layer, and this one explains why some people can encounter overwhelming evidence and somehow become even more confident. 5. the moment you know too much to change your mind. Imagine you've believed something for 10 years. You've defended it. You've told other people about it. Maybe you built part of your identity around it. Then, one day, you see evidence that contradicts everything. Not a rumor, not a random comment, real evidence. For a moment, something inside you freezes. You have two choices: change your mind or find a reason the evidence doesn't count. And most people don't realize how painful the first option can be, because changing your mind isn't just changing an opinion. Sometimes it means admitting that the person you were yesterday was wrong. This is connected to cognitive dissonance. When reality conflicts with our beliefs, the brain experiences psychological discomfort, and one way to reduce that discomfort is to change the belief. But another way is to change the story. Maybe the evidence is biased. Maybe the expert is lying. Maybe everyone else is brainwashed. Maybe the whole system is corrupt. Maybe there's some explanation nobody understands. Notice what happens. The belief survives. Only the explanation changes. And this is how intelligent people can sometimes become remarkably good at defending bad ideas. Intelligence gives you more mental tools, but tools don't automatically determine what you build. A sharp mind can search for truth, or it can build an incredibly sophisticated prison around a belief. That's the uncomfortable paradox. Being clever doesn't make you immune to irrationality. Sometimes it makes you better at rationalizing it. And suddenly, the person who thinks they're the smartest person in the room may have the hardest time escaping their own mind. But there's one final question. If all of this is true, how do you know you're not doing it right now? Think about the last argument you had. Not the one where you were obviously right. The other one. The one you still replay in your head. Remember the exact moment you realized the other person had a point. What did you do? Did you pause? Or did you immediately search for a reason they were wrong? Think about the last time someone criticized you. Did you examine what they said? Or did you spend more time thinking about how they said it? Think about the last opinion you changed. How painful was it? And now ask yourself even harder. How many things do you believe today because they're true? And how many do you believe because admitting they're false would change the way you see yourself? That's the part nobody likes, because stupidity isn't always ignorance. Sometimes it's the inability to notice your own ignorance. Sometimes the smartest thing you can say is, "I might be wrong." Not because you are, but because you understand something most people forget. Your brain is not a neutral judge. It is also your lawyer. It will defend you. It will explain you. It will protect your image. And sometimes it will help you lose an argument while making you feel like you won. So maybe the most intelligent person isn't the one who always has an answer. Maybe it's the person who can sit quietly when their ego wants to speak and ask one terrifying question: what if I'm the one who doesn't understand? Because the most dangerous kind of stupidity isn't being wrong, it's being wrong and loving the feeling of being right.